BTS news today, Los Angeles felt unusually quiet that morning, even though the sky was clear and the summer breeze softly touched the city. Yet, in a hidden studio nestled in the Hollywood Hills, two big names were in the middle of a debate that seemed simple, yet triggered a wave of speculation among fans and crew who witnessed the moment firsthand. Jungkook sat leaning against a tall black velvet chair, his hair slightly damp from just finishing a vocal session. Across from him, Jimin stared at a large monitor replaying footage of two different filming locations, Italy and Peru. Both looked intense, as if discussing fate itself. "Imagine this, bro. We open the scene in Florence, morning sunlight bouncing off old windows, and you standing on a balcony in a black suit," said Jimin, eyes sparkling. Jungkook chuckled, squinting. "And you in Cusco, surrounded by clouds and Incan stones? You mean we create two worlds in one MV?" They exchanged looks. It sounded insane. But aren't all legendary works born from madness? The debate between Italy and Peru had been ongoing for 2 weeks, ever since HYB's creative team brought the early concept for their new MV, a duet song still without an official title, but currently nicknamed Project Terra by the internal team. The song itself wasn't just a song. It was part of an ambitious project set to mark a new chapter in BTS's musical and visual journey, especially for Jimin and Jungkook, who have lately been collaborating more on experimental projects. "I feel like Peru gives off more of a raw, natural, spiritual vibe," Jungkook explained one night as they sat on the rooftop of the studio. "I've been browsing Machu Picchu every night since you mentioned it. Just imagine us singing under the Andes sky." Jimin responded gently, his voice calm but firm. "But you also know Italy has that classic beauty. Picture us in Venice at sunset, the water reflecting orange light, and our voices echoing in the stillness of that ancient city." To outsiders, the conversation sounded peaceful. But for the crew and managers sitting in the control room, the discussion felt like two magnetic forces pulling in opposite directions. Everyone knew, when Jimin and Jungkook pour their emotions into the creative process, the result always shakes the world. That very night, unplanned, they asked their producer Nayeon to replay the demo track. A slow, emotional melody with acoustic guitar and minimalist synths. The lyrics weren't finished yet, but the basic tune already carried something profoundly deep. Jungkook closed his eyes as the refrain played, while Jimin sat with his hands wrapped around his knees. In that silence, a major decision was forming. The next day, they met with the location team, who had prepared a presentation. Italy offered 3 spots: Florence, Venice, and Cinque Terre. Meanwhile, Peru had Cusco, Rainbow Mountain, and Lake Titicaca. Every location was stunning. Every place had soul. But the conversation shifted direction when their visual producer, Leah, presented a concept render, an MV that doesn't pick one location, but combines both worlds. "Why not both?" Leah said softly. "We start with the cold of the Peruvian mountains and end with the warmth of an Italian sunset." Jungkook and Jimin's eyes met, and in that moment, they seemed to read each other's minds. Maybe this wasn't about choosing, but about finding a middle path, one that reflects their duality as artists. The decision was made. The next 2 weeks would be a wild ride. They would fly to Peru first. Cusco became the starting point. On their first morning there, the thin air greeted them, and Jungkook felt slightly dizzy. But when they climbed Rainbow Mountain and shot the first scene, there were no complaints, only awe. Jimin danced in the mist, wrapped in a traditional Peruvian shawl. Jungkook strummed a small guitar, seated on a stone, eyes fixed on the colorful mountaintop. "Is this real?" he whispered after the camera stopped rolling. 3 days later, they moved to Lake Titicaca. There, they filmed a deeply emotional acoustic scene. Jimin's eyes looked glassy, not because of the script, but because the song hit him personally. "This song is about us," he said quietly. "About time, and about places that make us feel small, but full of hope." From Peru, they flew straight to Italy. Florence welcomed them warmly. While filming on the Ponte Vecchio, fans began gathering quietly, and they had to adjust their schedule to maintain location serenity. But at night, when the city was lit only by street lamps, Jimin and Jungkook stood at the edge of the bridge, singing the final part of the song Under the Stars. Venice was the finale. On a small gondola, they filmed the most poetic scene. The song reached its climax there, reflected in the shimmering waters and the harmony of their voices. A local violinist even joined spontaneously, adding depth to the outro. Filming was done, but the memories and story weren't. On the flight back to Korea, they watched the rough cut of the MV on a laptop screen. Silence. No words were spoken until the final minute. Then Jungkook said, "We just painted a picture, not a video." Jimin smiled and touched his friend's shoulder. This wasn't just about locations. This was about the journey. And about us. When the MV teaser dropped a week later, the world exploded. Fans in Italy and Peru welcomed it with pride, feeling seen in an artwork so personal. Speculation soared. Is this the start of an official Jungkook subunit? Is this part of a major upcoming album? HYB gave no statement. But one thing was certain. The MV had changed the tone of the global music conversation. More than that, the project became a celebration of two souls growing together in a long journey called BTS. Jungkook and Jimin had found a new way to tell their story, through unfamiliar lands, thin air, and eternal sunsets. The MV was set to release in mid-autumn. But even before then, the world had already started to shift since the moment the words Italy or Peru were spoken by these two artists. And maybe the answer was not to choose, but to become one. When they returned to Seoul, the silence felt louder than the fans who had welcomed them at the airport. They went back to the studio with one mission: to perfect the song. The MV was 90% done, but the track itself still had space to grow. The first night back in the studio was a long one. Jungkook held an acoustic guitar, eyes constantly glancing at Jimin, who was sitting cross-legged on a small couch, rewriting lyrics in his notebook. The song, which had started with just one verse and a refrain, was now evolving into something more intimate, more honest. "Do you remember Rainbow Mountain?" Jungkook asked suddenly. Jimin nodded softly. "I couldn't breathe. Not because of the altitude, but because you sang that part with your eyes closed, like you were praying. I'll never forget how your voice sounded then." Jimin turned. He didn't answer with words, but the look in his eyes told Jungkook he had felt the same. The song was finally titled Terra Luna, Earth and Moon, a name Jimin chose after writing lyrics about two worlds far apart, yet always watching each other from a distance. A metaphor for their journey, bound under one name, yet shining with their own shadows and light. They brought in a legendary vocal producer from Japan and a string arranger from Italy, whom they met spontaneously during the shoot. Even the sound of water from Venice canals was used in the bridge, blended into the track as atmospheric background. This song was no longer just Jimin and Jungkook's. It belonged to every place, time, and emotion they had lived together. When the final mixing ended, the studio went silent for a full minute. Even the sound engineer didn't speak. Jimin held Jungkook's arm. No congratulations, no celebration, just relief and gratitude. They knew this wasn't just a song. It was a legacy. The release day arrived. The second teaser, uploaded just 24 hours earlier, had already broken viewership records for a non-album project. The hashtag Terra Luna trended globally. HYB finally greenlit an exclusive live premiere through their own channel, in a limited capacity. Everything felt like a secret operation, yet perfectly organized.